I have the honor to represent and sponsor the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment for fiscal year 2012. The proposed dole budget for fiscal year 2012 is 6.988 billion. This represents less than 1% or 0.64% of the total new appropriation of 1.92 trillion. The DOL's fiscal year 2012 proposed budget has a minimal increase of 0.598 billion or 9% as compared with fiscal year 2011 General Appropriation Act. The department's proposed budget will be spent for the policies and programs that support the Philippine Development Plan 2011-2016 with the goal of inclusive growth and poverty reduction. Especially their policies and programs will be implemented to achieve the goals and objective of inclusive growth through decent and productive employment as embodied in the 2012-2016 Labor and Employment Plan. Considering the relevance of DOL's program is responding to the pressing needs and immediate needs of our people, I ask my fellow members of this 15th Congress to support the approval of the DOL's budget for fiscal year 2011. Thank you and good day, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Marc Cagas for his interpellation.
The distinguished gentleman from Davao Sur may take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and Majority Leader. Will the distinguished sponsor, my good friend from Caloocan, maybe the future mayor of Caloocan, answer a few questions from his party mate from the Nationalista Party?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, I will not ask questions regarding the entire budget of the Department of Labor and Employment. I would only focus on one aspect of your proposed budget, which concerns the livelihood aspect of the Department of Labor and Employment. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, how much for 2012 is the proposed budget for livelihood services and assistance? And a subsequent question would be, how much was the budget allocated during or for the 2011 budget, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor?
For 2012 budget, the DOL allocated the amount of 423 million. And it will benefit about 58,000 jobs.
And how much was allocated last year or for 2011, distinguished sponsor? 2011 budget.
Saan? Ito?
469 yan last year.
For this year yun. For this year, we have 469 million 418,000. Kung titingnan natin, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, medyo bumaba pa ngayon ng konti dahil mababa ang budget ng DOL.
Precisely, distinguished sponsor, that's why I was really interested, because of all the agencies, I think most of the agencies ask for increases in their respective allocations. And how come, Mr. Distinguished Sponsor, that this very important aspect of DOLE, which is livelihood, there is we cannot say that this is just a small decrease, but in fact a huge decrease in the amount appropriated or proposed to be allocated for livelihood services and assistance. May this representation be clarified? How come instead of increasing, why was there a decrease? What's the basis for the decrease on said allocation, distinguished sponsor?
That was the amount allocated by DBM.
Well, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, the proposed was a bigger amount, but this amount was sliced by DBM because baka konti lang ang budget na na-allocate sa kanila. That's why the DBM sliced it. But originally, they proposed a bigger budget for this livelihood program.
Then why did the DBM slash the said budget? Is it because maybe the implementation was not so successful? Would that be the reason, or is there something else, Mr. Distinguished Sponsor? Because I want to know, because as you've said, you are earmarked to benefit 58,000, or you are earmarked to create as much as 58,000 jobs, Distinguished Sponsor, and with a decreased amount allocated or proposed amount to be allocated for such a very important part of the DOLE's service. How did it came to be, Distinguished Sponsor? Maybe Secretary Baldo should have argued and lobbied with Secretary Butchabad of DBM with some more
Added to our present.
eagerness, so to speak, Distinguished Sponsor.
Out of the budget last year, which is magkano yan? 400.
Or is it because, Mr. Speaker, Distinguished Sponsor,
Out of the budget last year, which is 469 million, the DBM still allocated or gave them additional 168 million. So for this year, kaya medyo binabaan dahil nakapagbigay ng mas malaki o additional of 168 million for this year.
in other words, Distinguished Sponsor, Mr. Speaker, there are still unused obligations or appropriations for the 2011 budget.
Meron pa.
Is my understanding correct, Distinguished Sponsor? Why, as to the reason why, for this year, this aspect of DOLE has been decreased, Distinguished Sponsor?
Yes, there is. There is still 169 million which has to be implemented for this year.
For this year. And out of the 423 million allotted for the 2011 budget, under your SAOB, by the way, does the DOLE, did you make your SAOB already, your statement of allotments and obligations? You did. So you can answer my question. So how much of this 423 billion pesos from 2011 budget was already spent and implemented for this year? Distinguished Speaker, my esteemed colleague from the Nationalista Party, our sponsor.
61 million.
61%.
As of July of this year, 61% had already been utilized.
So 61% translate to how much billion you have, Yusek? Magkano yun? Can you help my good friend? How much is 61%?
About 230 or 40 million. 284 million had already utilized.
So 284 plus the remainder of 169.
180, more or less 180 million. More or less 180 million.
In other words, you still have 453 million left in your coffers as far as DOLE is concerned. Am I correct?
More or
Because-
less about 180 million is still to be
480?
utilized. About 180.
180? And then kasi you said that 261% thereof was already utilized, which estimates to 284 million. So I subtracted,
From 400.
or the remainder would be 284, and Dole said that DBM gave them an additional of 169 million. So we still have 453 million.
469.
Maybe is this part of the? I read yesterday in a daily that government would create more than, I think, 80,000 jobs. Mr. Speaker, the sponsor. Is this part of the basis? This is part of the remaining 453 billion, which still unused appropriations for 2011.
184.
Distinguished sponsor.
Well, for 469 million, 61% had already utilized, and there's still 184 million to be utilized before the end of the year. That's why they reduce it, the budget for 2012.
Kaya nga, malinaw po na sa 469, ang sabi, 61% na ho ang nagamit. No? In-estimate natin, sabi niyo po, 284 million, roughly. Or million, or is it billions? Billion. No? And then, DBM gave Dole an additional of 169 million. So if we add 284 plus 169, that amounts to 453 million, over and above the proposed 423 million. Distinguished sponsor, please don't get me wrong. I'm not against this. I just want to be clarified, because I want to know the figures. How much exactly? How many jobs were exactly generated out of the 61% spent specifically for the livelihood projects of the under the Department of Labor and Employment?
Represent 65%. Out of, ilan to?
58,000 that we are targeting.
Those benefited was 54,902,000, a figure of 94.65% of the targeted 58,000.
Pero yung appeal, padi-dismiss nyo. Para 54 kasi
So 54,000 jobs were generated out of the 54,900 plus
54,000
jobs.
out of 58,000 targeted to be given livelihood program.
No. The 58,000 you said is the one embodied in our GAB for 2012. What I'm referring to, the single sponsor, is that how much jobs, yung 58,000 ba, is that the same projected jobs output in 2012 compared to 2011? Or, para malinaw lang po, no? Ang tinatanong ko po, sa perang nagastos na 284 billion, ilan na ho ang trabahong na-create natin? Kasi sabi ng USEC, meron na ho kayong saob. So, it must be stated in your saob, because everything that a department spends is found in each department's saob.
Ano ito? Yes, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, it's close to 55,000 that were benefited of this program.
55,000.
And we are targeting about 99,000
For 2012.
for 2012.
Tama, for 2012. So meaning kasi meron pa tayong ano, extra.
2011.
for 2011 because meron pa tayong savings, di ba? May savings pa, no? Kasi meron pang natitirang 453 million. Tama ho ba? So if Congress, both houses approves the proposed budget of 423 million pesos, then naguguluhan mo ba kayo, Yusek? Hindi naman? Oh. Di ba may savings tayo? Yun ang sinasabi mo kasi July pa lang, hindi pa natin nagagastos eh. Di ba? So, and now you're asking for next year, a budget of 423. And that's why the distinguished sponsor said that there was a decrease because DBM kind-heartedly gave you as much as 169 million. So we must adjust our projected job creation, distinguished sponsor, members of the Dole family, so that it will be clear, because we are now in the plenary debates and we should be expecting questions such as this one. Oh.
Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, with the additional of 168 million, definitely the department will adjust its target. Okay,
Oh,
thank
idagdag
you.
natin sa ano. Let's add this to the 423 million being asked by Dole for 2012. So that
Yes, Your Honor.
so that more jobs will be created. All right, distinguished sponsor, out of the roughly 55,000 jobs created, can you categorize what these jobs are? Maybe you can give me some classifications or ano bang mga trabaho ito, distinguished sponsor?
You will submit the report na lang. The specific date.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, we do not have the specific report, but can we just submit it to you
Hindi,
by
okay.
tomorrow? The,
Okay, okay po yun na isubmit sa akin. Pero wala ba silang alam dyan kung anong ano? Kahit sabihin lang na anong trabaho bang ano? Ano bang mga trabahong na napondohan natin at nabigyan? I'm sure they would know. Hindi naman kailangan ng report eh. Tomorrow I'll wait for the report, but for
Number
purposes
three,
of
number
interpellation, can they at least, distinguished sponsors, through you, give me 4 or 5 areas na or jobs na napasukan itong 55,000? Again, I would assume that your figures are correct. I'm just following the answers that you gave me, that you're giving me.
livelihood, self-employment. Ano pa? Livelihood, self-employment.
Session suspended.
Pakisulat.
That we suspend consideration of the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment, including attached agencies except the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority.
Any objections? There being none, consideration of the proposed budget of the Department of Labor and Employment, including its attached agencies except TESDA, is hereby approved. Suspended. Majority Leader.
Suspended lang.
Suspended.
Okay.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we terminate the consideration of the budget of the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority.
Any objections? There being none, consideration may, before,
Mr. Speaker, I move
before,
that we recognize the Honorable Minority Leader.
before we consider the motion of the Honorable Majority Leader, the Honorable Minority Leader is hereby recognized.
On the part of the minority, we join the majority in terminating the consideration of the proposed budget for TESDA.
Any objections? There being none, consideration of the proposed budget of TESDA for calendar year 2012 is hereby terminated.
Objection.
Majority Leader,
Mr. Speaker, I move that we resume consideration of the budget of the Department of Labor and Employment, including its attached agencies. And for that matter, I move that we recognize the Honorable Marc Cagas for his interpellation.
before the Honorable Marc Cagas is recognized, may we now request the Honorable Malapitan to proceed with his answers to the previous query. Please proceed.
Well, kanina yung tinatanong will be for livelihood and self-employment. Livelihood, the sari-sari store, the fruit processing, and other self-employed.
Okay. Maganda ho yun, ano? At least we make our, especially those from the really urban poor and rural poor areas, more self-sufficient, and to give them hope that there is pala an agency of government who is willing to fund, not only help them, but to actually give them funding.
Ano ba itong 58,000?
One more question on this aspect. How does the how can an ordinary family avail of the same distinguished sponsor? Do they go to the regional director of DOLE, or who do they approach?
To the provincial officers.
They have to go to the provincial officers of the DOLE.
Mga
Provincial officer.
is that what we call
Provincial
peso?
director.
Peso ba? Under peso ba yan yung sec?
Provincial.
Provincial director.
Provincial director. They have to go to the provincial director.
What is the job, since the good USEC is there, what is the job of a peso manager?
Employment facilitation of the LGU.
I can see the TESDA secretary shaking hands all over the place. He's very happy. How come he hasn't not shook my hands yet? Oh? Okay. Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, can you explain to the members of the House present today what is this program of the DOLE named DILP towards SED?
DILP, Dole Integrated Livelihood Program, Your Honor.
Towards community enterprise development. And what are the three major aspects of this program of the DOLE, Mr. Stugi sponsor?
Oh, seryoso ka?
Alin dito?
Galing mo.
Dole Integrated Livelihood Program is designed to assist community groups in developing sustainable enterprises or undertakings right in their communities, thereby providing opportunities for generation income through wage and self-employment. It aims to enhance,
Thank you.
and transform existing livelihood projects in the barangays into community enterprises to be managed by community group.
Distinguished sponsor, when did this particular program of DOLE start? This DILP towards SED?
This year, 2007.
This started
2007.
on what year? This
It started in 2007, Your Honor,
This started in 2007.
but it was enhanced in 2010.
And since the same started on 2007, can we fairly say that said program of DOLE has become successful, Mr. Speaker, the distinguished sponsor?
It has provided self-employment opportunities for 58,000. And disadvantage to
advantage workers.
Well, as we rated, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, the project is successful because we had generated or the department had employed about 58,000.
58,000 since 2002?
For this year.
Just for this year.
Mr. Speaker, sige sponsor, to truly say that a program or this program has been successful, I myself can't even do this, but that would be abdicating my job as a minority leader, asking the sponsor. So may I suggest that marami namang staff ang Dole, that they give me a since 2002, parang saob nyo, no? The USEC is from Davao, na-assign sa Davao yan si USEC, kaibigan natin yan. Joel, alis na, hindi pala ako na...
Well, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, ang daming mga nag-benefits. Kung titignan natin, in 2000, we start in 2009, 141,000 had benefited. 2010, 99,221.
So, but still, para hindi na humirapan yung ang aking kapartido, si Manong Oka, sana ihilingin ko po sa Dole, magbigay ho naman kayo ng saob, Ma'am Yusek, no? Tagaay kong saob from 2002 up to the present. Nandun naman lahat yun yung gastusin ng department sa saob. Kung alam nyo naman ho siguro pinag-uusapan ko, di ba,
Okay.
Yusek? Okay.
Okay,
You give me that, ha?
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, if you wish, we will give the complete details report to you.
Baka pag terminate na itong budget, hindi na magbigay sa akin.
Hindi, sigurado.
For said project of the Dole, can we safely say that we target marginalized and disadvantaged self-employed workers? Is it safe for me to assume that that is what we being targeted for by this
Yes.
program of Dole?
Yes, Your Honor.
And can we at least, for information of everybody, marami, okay. For the information of everybody, can we at least say or define what is a self-employed or marginalized worker, Mr. Distinguished Sponsor? Ano ba ito? Karpintero, mason,
Target client.
embalmer, barbero,
Target clients.
pardon me?
Well, you might be asking for the target clients, which is ambulant vendors, drivers and operators of pedicab and tricycle, home-based and home service workers, scrap collector workers, landless farmers, marginal fishery workers, others deemed necessary to be covered by the DOL and LGU.
Kasama din ho ba rito yung mga child laborers? Kasi mayroon tayong laban against child laborers eh. Pwede ba natin silang
Yes, Your Honor,
mapabenepisyo sa programa?
isasama na o kasama na rin sa programa.
O kasi marami hong workers na hindi pa natin nabibigyan ng tuon, like elderly, mga kababaihan, na kulang ho ang safety nets, no? So sana sa 423 million na ating pinopropose for 2012, isama naman natin sila at mabantayan ng maayos yung, particularly yung mga kababaihan at mga
Yes,
child
Your Honor,
labor.
it's included in the program already.
Salamat po. At dahil po nag-udyok ang aking idol, this is my last question. Fortunately or unfortunately? Hindi, fortunately. Napansin ko po, I observed that this aspect of DOLE is livelihood, and the money will be used to generate unemployment. Can we say, nandito naman si Junjun kanina eh. So, can we say then that this aspect of DOLE is part or a major component of one of the President's priorities, one of his social contract with our people, which is poverty reduction? Tama ho ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
And alam ho ba ng Dole family kung magkano yung kabuuang budget ng ating Pangulo as far as poverty reduction is concerned? Nasa opening pages yun ng GAB. Baka alam nila. Sir.
Wala pang figure. We still do not know if how much is the budget of the President.
Uy. Alam niyo po, kung hindi ko lang idol si Joel, magtatanong pa sana ako. But, you should know. The Dole family should know. Because these are informative questions. And these are very easy to find. We can find this in the explanatory note of the general provisions of the GAB.
Padadala nilang ito ng kopya.
Hindi. Dapat sila alam nila. No? Kasi malaking halaga to. Because I'm interested, Mr. Speaker, the sige sponsor, because if the same, as you've said, is part already of the poverty reduction priority of our President, then maybe I would even question why we are asking 423 million pesos more, Mr. Speaker. Kasi, according to the Committee on APRO, beautiful, the poverty reduction program of the government amounts to more than, alam nila yun eh. Dapat kayo sumagot, hindi ako eh.
130, more than 130
Asan?
billion. Sa lahat yan eh. Yan, hanggang dito sa letter D. About 130 billion yung nakapagod.
Mahaba pala ito eh. About 130 billion. If you want, I can read it to you. 2 pages.
And then, bibigyan ko na lang kayo nung summary ko para matapos na tayo. Ha?
Oh, sige. I'll just read it to you.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, may I just emphasize that we should use this money very carefully. And I've required Dole to submit me SAOB from 2002 up to the present, and expect this probably by next week, no? Kung meron na kayo, baka pwede din bigay bukas o sa Lunes, okay lang po. And this 423, I hope this would not become redundant because as you've said, the same is part of the President's priority, which is poverty reduction. Am I correct, distinguished sponsor?
Yes, Your Honor.
So, with that, Mr. Speaker, with that, I'd like to thank my party mate with the assurance that Dole would furnish me with all the information that I've requested, Mr. Speaker.
Pinahirapan pa na party mates daw.
Wala pang assurance, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Your Honor. We'll give it to you as soon as possible. Perhaps tomorrow.
Okay. With that, Mr. Speaker, I do thank Teka, perhaps baka ma-interpret natin ng iba yun. No? With that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the good gentleman from Caloocan, as I've said, my party mate, for answering questions from this representation. That would be all, Mr. Speaker.
All right.